Welcome back, everyone. Once again, thank you for joining us today. Our next session will be led by Paul Tonai, Business Development Manager at Icicle. He will be speaking about data-driven warehouse operations, evidence-based insights for amplified productivity and profit. During his presentation, you will learn how to reap the benefits of automation to build capacity for lean production teams through supply chain challenges, optimize maintenance to ensure sustained productivity, reduce waste to meet profitability and sustain goals, build supply chain agility and flexibility through supplier and formula management, and achieve operational excellence through a unified data-driven approach. Paul has managed operations for his own family enterprise for over 20 years and has extensive hands-on experience using data-driven systems through many required audits and constantly changing regulatory environments. He has helped shape Icicle ERP to meet the needs of the food processing companies. After Paul has finished his presentation, we'll open the virtual floor for questions. As a reminder, if you have any questions during or after the presentations, please post them in the Zoom question box below. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks very much, Mario, for that great introduction. And thanks, Mariella, for that great first presentation. I really listened intently to it. As Mario was saying, my name is Paul Tolnay. I'm a business development manager with Icicle Technologies. Icicle Technologies is a unified ERP warehouse management software solution. So we deal with medium and small businesses to kind of make sure that their uptime is fully established. And we also handle things like shipping, receiving, traceability, food safety. So lots under the umbrella. So I'm really happy to be talking about this. During my presentation today, the agenda that I'll be going through is just a brief introduction, which we're doing now. I'll explain the advantages of data-driven culture for food production. We'll be talking about building capacity and capability with automated data-driven systems. And then we'll also do some data automation to improve profitability, because money is always key, right? And then, of course, we'll have time for some questions afterwards. Of course, please feel free to ask questions during the presentation, and we'll keep them for afterwards. As Mario was saying, a little bit brief history about my working past, a CV as it were. I actually, out of high school, I went into broadcast journalism. I worked for a local radio station here in Vancouver called News 1130, and then went back over to the family business, which was a federally registered meat manufacturing facility here in Canada in Vancouver. I was the SQF practitioner, which is a scheme under the Global Food Safety Initiative to make sure that we were tickety-boo on quality and compliance. And running a small family business with 10 employees, it means that I pretty much knew how to do everything from the balance sheet to washing the bottles. So I'll be including some anecdotes from my 20 years of running that business that I hope you'll find useful and might be able to actually put onto your business. So the first, I want to do a little bit of audience integration here, and I have a question for you. So the first question is, does your company use data to monitor machine uptime? And there's actually 4 answers here. And Tara, I think that you have those the poll ready to go. There we go. First answer is yes. Second answer is maybe, but it might cost too much. The third one is maybe, but it might take up more time and resources. And the other answer is 4. So, is your company or business ready to implement data-driven analysis of uptime? Please take a moment to answer the questions, and there we go. So it looks like no, one person says that they're not ready to implement, and the other one is it might cost too much. Well, let's hope that we can change your mind over the course of this presentation. According to Forrester, data-driven organizations report a 30% annual growth in addition to being profitable and acquiring and retaining new customers. So using data-driven decision-making, it will help you realize the full potential of your business strategy. It will leverage data and reduction friction. It will gain consistency. It will make you agile and quick to adapt. It will improve transparency and awareness. And this is something that Mariella was really focusing on. It will show your employees why things are working. And it will cut costs and generate revenue. And you can make some quick and confident decision making. Having everyone contribute to the quality of the data. So if you don't have everyone contributing, you don't get this, the bottom of this pyramid here. You should have accuracy as your number one. And so the more people that are actually giving you data, the more accurate your data will be. It has to be complete. It has to be consistent. It has to be timely, hopefully live, as opposed to writing it down on a report that then gets transferred into a computer system and then gets analyzed by 5 different people before the actual decision maker sees it. And then the validity, the ability to actually check to make sure that you aren't getting erroneous data. Really important when you build a data-driven culture in your facility is you have to have a champion. And it has to work top down and bottom up as well. But there's got to be a champion on both sides of that scale. In small companies, perhaps one person is good enough. In a larger company, you probably should have a champion in each division that is championing that collection of data and making sure that people are doing it properly. If you're doing monthly or weekly team meetings where data is presented, that's great. Also great to have a live dashboard like Mariella was explaining. That is a fantastic tool. Analytics drives business agility. So the more the company uses data, the more powerful it becomes. System develops a system that develops a digital model of your business and make it easier to analyze the result. Key to the winning the battle in this one. Descriptive analytics. What happened? Diagnostic analytics. Why did it happen? Predictive analytics. What will likely happen next? And then prescriptive analytics. How can we make it happen or not happen? Again, if we wanted it to. And oh, this is where that second poll question was. Never mind. Sorry, the slides are out of order. My apologies. So building capacity. Data-driven systems build capacity for food businesses. And this means that you can create a culture and infrastructure that allows your company to do more internally, speeding up production, as well as improving your systems and processes. It is often essential to enhance an organization's capabilities to implement a strategic plan or other major business initiatives. In Icicle's experience, we've worked with both startup and established companies in laying the groundwork to achieve their goals. Plant-based food companies reached greater distribution and export markets by meeting compliance requirements, aiding in waste reduction and zero waste efforts through complete traceability, freeing up capacity with Internet of Things sensors or for automated monitoring. And this is very key to a lot of those key performance indicators if it's automated like that. Advanced planning and costing capabilities. So these are things that if you have the real-time data coming into a centralized system where you can have a dashboard that is automatically populated, where staff don't even have to touch it, you are always going to win the game there. Your business becomes more adaptable to new, difficult, or adverse circumstances like supply chain challenges and rising costs. And you also become more resilient and innovative, and you're able to thrive through a crisis. In business, compliance is essential. So we'll start here, especially in the food industry. It plays a vital role in ensuring your company moves in the right direction, and it doesn't have to be a burden if you can automate the processes. Many will say that the true compliance go well beyond simply meeting the requirements or of regulatory frameworks. So GMPs, what are they? Good manufacturing practices. I'm sure we all are familiar with this term. It's maintaining industry, company, and governmental standards. Personnel should be on the top of the list. A strong workforce compliance programs reduce the likelihood of waste, fraud, abuse, discrimination, and corruption by uninformed employees. Then you go to the facility and grounds, the safety operations, sanitation and facilities and controls, equipment and materials, processes and controls, warehousing and distribution, holding and distribution of food and byproducts, and defect action levels. So from a food safety perspective, essential data points include doing your hazard analysis. Amazing how hazard analysis can actually have an impact on a maximum uptime. Critical control points. Do you actually need a critical control point where you've set a critical control point? Make sure that you are constantly updating and watching those critical control points to ensure that they actually are indeed critical. Critical limits. Are they critical or are they just operating limits? Having live data allows you to make sure that you're actually following those limits, and corrective actions and documentation and capture of traceability data. And the more automated you can make traceability, the better, because you save in the office costs rather than having to put more work onto the office staff to capture this data. As you analyze these data points at a high level, you can uncover some pretty valuable insights. What is working and what isn't? What are the hotspots? What are the trends and non-conformances? Look at both the ingredients and equipment for this. Check on the outcomes of your monitoring and quality procedures, and are team members adhering to their required responsibilities? This demonstrates your company's commitment to compliance against government standards. In addition, if your team has committed to meeting certification requirements, such as the Global Food Safety Initiative, SQF, BRC, non-GMO, vegan, kosher, etc., it's a matter of trust and validation to improve your supplier-customer relationship and to access new markets, etc. If any of the data is living in a binder somewhere, going stale, it loses its value, and leaders are unable to provide mid-course correction on a timely basis. A data-driven culture ensures that everyone on your team, from the production floor all the way up to head office, is able to contribute to the quality of the information by adding value at every stage of the process. So when we're designing your systems, it's important that you find what the prerequisite program that you have to comply with what you want to comply with. Then you develop standard operating procedures around those prerequisite programs. As you design your procedures, you want to keep an eye on what tasks you can automate and have a tool that reports back that the automated tasks are being completed successfully. Having all your data stored in one repository makes it easy to leverage it to allow for continuous improvements. And there's lots of forms and graphs and data and Excel spreadsheets and stuff like that we pass around from in small business, just inside with a few people. In larger business, you're giving to corporate. If you had a central repository that didn't require the manufacturer of this data, that everyone could see from the production worker all the way up to the CEO, it makes things much more open and honest and easy to follow. So efficiencies add up, especially for high volume operations. Process automation gives warehouse operations the benefit of faster turnaround times, fewer manual processes. Data entry in real-time workforce becomes more productive when you actually don't have to write it down on a piece of paper and then someone type it into a computer. You reduce errors because it's happening live. It increased efficiency, and there's cost savings there, obviously. For an example of one of Icicle's clients, saving as much as 6 seconds for an order to be picked, multiplied over the number of transactions per year, resulted in over $100,000 in savings for that company. Now imagine more efficiencies realized across each department in receiving, inventory, production, etc. The end result is that your team optimizes operations, increases quality, maximizes quality, and as well as lower risk and even overall cost of compliance. Data-driven operations ensure that you maintain productivity and audit readiness. This means less time required to prepare for and complete audits. Your team stays fully informed of expectations to meet and exceed requirements. Leadership has the capability to facilitate mock recalls for training and audit purposes easily. And this is something that Mariella actually keyed on, where food companies are very afraid of recalls. And yes, we never want to see a recall happen, but definitely using mock recalls to your advantage to make your recall system more effective is vital. So your staff, although we should strive to never have a recall, all of them should know exactly what to do in the event of one. It's almost like the fire drills that we used to have in elementary school. We never really wanted to have a fire, but we still did the fire drills, and we still knew what we would do if we ever heard the fire alarm. And this is exactly how mock recalls should be treated. Your staff should know exactly what to do when it happens. So the level of detail is crucial to executing surgical recalls when necessary. Some companies even opt to include serial numbers for items under the same lot code, which becomes very important for companies in the edible cannabis industry, for example, where it's highly regulated, a new market, as it were. It is important to have all the data points needed to demonstrate how your facility enforces a proper recall process. What are you going to do for your submission to the authorities, notifications, an effectiveness check, the status reports, root cause evaluations, post-recall corrective action plans, and implementation. I actually have a real life example of a recall that we did that was mostly a product hold, but there was a small recall that happened. I won't go into much detail of what actually happened to cause the recall. It was fairly silly, but I was on my way to LaGuardia Airport from New York City when I got the call from the Canadian Food Inspection agency that there was a potential recall. And I had about an hour before my flight back to Vancouver where I was not going to have Wi-Fi on it. So I had pretty much 60 minutes to effect this recall using a system like Icicle, which we had actually implemented. Within 15 minutes from the backseat of an Uber, I affected the recall and had everything controlled, and we knew where everything was within 15 minutes and had it avoided an actual recall because of it. So data gives you the power to uncover the efficacy of your corrective actions and verification activities, as well as successes and failures related to the recall process. In these unprecedented times, we have an interesting array of supply chain challenges, increasing risk and profitability. My apologies. There's a shortage of workers in the food industry. So having documented procedures and automated tasks make it easier to train new employees and for other team members to pick up where another left off. You can also ensure that only staff with relevant training are assigned to tasks. Climate change and flooding, it is around. So cloud-based systems ensure you have everything accessible in the event of an emergency. If you're still basing all of your data on binders and papers, what happens if you have a flood and you lose all of that documentation? What happens in the event of a massive forest fire that breaks out, like half of BC was on fire last summer? What happens if you lose that data? It's really tough to pick up a business again when you don't have data stored offsite. And then, of course, the big one was COVID and avian influenza outbreaks sweeping around North America. And I guess it's monkeypox right now. So biosecurity levels are at the highest level, and being able to control and track who touched what is critical to preventing any spread. So to ensure resilience through the supply chain disruptions and shortages, supplier management becomes key to sustaining productivity and profitability. The ability to look for alternative suppliers and managing alternate formulations, recipes for a product provides flexibility for businesses. With the increased price of ingredients, it becomes even more challenging to maximize margins. So next, we're going to go over some data points and automated systems food companies can leverage to protect profits. But before that, we've got another poll question. Now that you've heard how companies are able to realize cost savings with data, is your company ready to implement data-driven systems to monitor uptimes? So we've got a yes and a no still. Fantastic. So we already know that profit margins in the food processing industry are generally lower than average. According to a CSI market, the gross profit margin for the food processing industry is on a decline after staying relatively the same for a number of years. Currently at 19.2%, the last time the industry saw numbers this low was 2016. And when compared to other industries, this is considerably below the overall market average of 49.4%. These small margins may result in intense competition in the industry, and why the ability to maximize margins is true competitive advantage. Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization are what we're looking for in the EBITDA TDA, if you haven't ever seen that acronym. So how can we use or what's the benefit of that maximum uptime, and where should we look And Mariella actually was really accurate on this. Look at the micro stoppages. I've got an anecdote from my own facility where we had a $1 million production line that was being stopped pretty much every week by a horizontal bag sealer that went down once a week. The actual Teflon tape that it uses to heat it up would break down, and we would have to change it. It was a quick process. It was only about 10 or 15 minutes, but in those 10 or 15 minutes, because it was integral to the process line, we lost that in production. And we quickly found out that if we just saved 1 month of that 10 or 15 minute shutdown, all of a sudden we paid for a second bag sealer. So look for those small breakdowns that happen and see if you can put in a backup machine, or see if you can put in a redundant machine that's there. You'll find that you'll save a lot of money. There's a large scale thing. Anyone from British Columbia knows our BC ferries are our pride and joy. However, you may recall there was an issue where a cotter pin was missing from one of the ferries, and it went slamming into a marina because it couldn't reverse its engines. And the cost of the cotter pin was 50 cents. And they didn't have a spare one on board. So having spare parts and spare things at the ready can be invaluable. And there's a grand scheme, oops, that happened. So you have to have properly documented maintenance protocols, and you have to make sure that they're implemented by staff. You analyze data to discover what the issues are. There's got to be preventative and corrective maintenance logs and schedules. So you want to know what you planned on fixing and did actually fix it, and what you had to fix and why you had to fix it. Modern safety programs like the Global Food Safety Initiative require these records anyways, so you should already be recording them. Tracking of assets like tools so that they're available when needed. Again, these are already GFSI requirements, so you should already be doing something like this. So maximizing margins. Supplier management, this is huge. As a manufacturer, it is a responsibility to not only ensure your program meets international requirements, but to check that all your incoming ingredients, which could number in the thousands. So data-driven systems allow you to track vendors and ingredients, monitor supplier audits and qualifications, and quickly sift through irrelevant information to pinpoint problem pressure points. Tracking costs and lead times are especially important. Ingredient shortages can result in production downtime. It's always bad when 3 pounds of onions is what stops 50 million pounds of product being made that day. And as you watch trends in lead time, you can identify your best options and look for alternatives during unforeseen disruptions. Having access to systems that you can query for alternate ingredients also offers potential solutions. Using data to automatically create real-time production run costing is especially powerful when looking for opportunities to optimize costs, and alternate ingredient sources offer more flexibility. Having alternate formulas, recipes also ensures uptime when there are shortages. Another key to the supplier management is focusing on, although you should be looking at day-to-day, 24-hour to 48-hour trends, there should also be at least a month of forecasting, so your staff expect what's coming up. So they can quickly look up at a calendar or a dashboard of what's coming on their schedules for the next month or even quarter would be great. Large grocery chains have required lead time requirements. This is true. There's a lot of grocery chains that will penalize you if your product doesn't arrive exactly on schedule. So it might be time for small and medium-sized businesses to work with their suppliers and get lead time guarantees, because they're being required to give the same. Inventory thresholds. Are there any deviations? What are critical deviations to minimum stock amounts? This is important to have at the touch of a button in an automated system, so that you can tell that long before you get to that critical threshold that your inventory is running low. Improving employee productivity. Equipment uptime alone is important, but staff uptime is also important. And I think Mariella really touched on this. And one of the ways that we can ensure that we're getting to that point is digital training records will ensure that the right person is being assigned to the right task, digital assessment of hours worked versus total productivity, and automated OSHA compliance. There was one anecdote that I wanted to give that actually had nothing to do with my work business, but had to do with a hotel that I was helping out with, trying to maximize their uptime. And I had learned that this hotel was spread over six floors. It only had about 48 suites in it, so it was a specialty hotel, and they were losing lots of time. Like their room cleaners were very slow in comparison to other hotels that these managers had been with, and all of them were missing something. Cleaning staff, if you've ever known this about hotels, when they get their cleaning cart, each cleaner gets their own cart, and they kind of covet that cart. It's their own little cart, and they always use it. Well, this hotel, like I said, it was over six floors, so the cleaners would have to wait for the elevators, and they were wasting as much as 3 hours a day just standing there waiting for the elevator. When there was perfectly good stairs that they could run up and down around the corner. And by eliminating that coveted hotel cart that each of the cleaners had, and having one cart per floor that was pre-stocked, they eliminated about 2.5 hours of wasted time transiting between floors. So how do we put all this together? We build a unified data-driven foundation, and it provides many opportunities to reduce costs. You can go paperless. This is, it's 2022. I know that there's a lot of food industry that are still using fax machines. So the more you can go paperless, the better it will be. And it will also support sustainability. It reduces overhead and the cost of manual data entry. Again, we'll go back over to that one issue where a supplier or a distributor saved 6 seconds an order and saved over $100,000 a year just by those 6 seconds. It reduces the cost of compliance requirements. So it's less time to prepare monthly reports because these things are all on a dashboard, less time to prepare for and execute an audit. Obviously, audits are important. Inventory management and reducing waste, and also making sure that you're following FIFO. If your staff are suggested to use the right lot code, they probably will. But if nothing's suggesting it, then they probably won't. Avoided costs, maintaining uptime, mitigating risks of a recall and its impact on the brand. Leveraging knowledgeable market partners, managing suppliers, alternative ingredient suppliers, trending data for production, really important. This is where you can find out where, if you have a piece of equipment that's starting to go, you'll notice that trend start heading down on your yields. And then you can review all the data that you're collected at least annually. Like, you should step back at least annually and review every piece of data that was collected. But yes, much like Mariella was saying, key performance indicators, daily basis is the best idea. One of the anecdotes that I wanted to share with you on this one was when we sold our business, the new owners were very much into not having. We as a family company always used to take family breaks. All the staff would stop the equipment, we would go for our lunch, and then we would come back and start the equipment up. New owners were more interested in keeping that equipment working and improving yields that way. Sometimes you have to realize that the staff you have are just not going to accept something like that. And we actually did the comparison back and forth, and the staff were actually causing more problems by their swap outs than it would have cost us if we just took the half-hour break and let everyone stop at once. So sometimes you do have to realize that even though you want to try to maximize your uptime, sometimes it might be more cost effective to allow for a downtime of like a half an hour for a lunch break or something like that. And with that brings me to the end of my presentation. Back over to Mario.
All right. Thank you very much, Paul. Great presentation. Lots of good information there.
Thanks.
We now have some time for our Q&A part of the session. Please post your questions in the questions tab. Some that have come in during the presentation. First one. What have you seen as typical ROI for companies implementing a more data-driven system?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, from memory, and I apologize if these numbers are a little bit wrong, but you can reduce your safety and quality control costs by about 35% is what we found in the market. Admin and support costs by 2/3 easily. Reduced documentation costs by 80% without having to print everything out, obviously, and then reduced audit preparation and duration for about 40% or more.
Okay. How could data help companies that have smaller production teams of, say, 3 people?
That's really a great question. And, again, if you look at that hotel example of the hotel cart, had their staff reported that they were waiting for the staff, if they could have that data that they were waiting for the elevator, and this hotel had 4 or 5 people working for it because it was so few suites. That data would have been picked up by anyone in upper management, but they never saw it happening. So if you never see it happening, you'll never catch it.
Yeah, just your anecdote about the hotel. I've been to a lot of hotels. I just thought everybody, just used whatever cart was available, right? And
Oh no, they
I
covet them.
guess,
Ask
yeah,
any of them.
yeah, but yeah, I can understand, if everybody's got to restock it, and got to move it up and down the floors, right? So,
Yep.
another question: what are some of the best ways to automate data capture for food production?
Oh, absolutely. So if you're with due respect to Mariella and her system of charts and paper based systems, if you can have an automated data system, and I'm gonna prop Icicle up a little bit because this is what we do best, but something that's multi-platform that every user has access to, whether it be on your cell phone, a Palm Pilot. Do those exist anymore? a tablet, a PC, a Mac, whatever format, as long as it can get on the web and they can get to a website and quickly record their data, that's the best way to realize live data benefits.
Okay. Paul, do you have anything else that you want to add?
No, just thanks very much. This has been real. Thanks to Mariella and to Jim for their presentations, and to you, Mario and Tara, for putting this together. It's been a pleasure. I
All
hope
right.
people have enjoyed it.
Thank you once again, Paul, for a very informative session.